We have 4 lecturers with us: Tiago Barral, Mastro Miranda from CPE, and David Turk from IEA. And from IPA, Tiago, he is here with during all this project, and he has noticed that that was an opportunity to work in this research with us, in this data research of investment and clean power, so clean energy. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Clarissa. Thank you, everyone, all of our colleagues representing CGE, EPE, CEPAL, and IEA. Clarissa, indeed, we have been in the Mission Innovation Forum in Switzerland in 2018, and that time we were able to interact with the International Power Institution in a way of making it more visible and to understand how these investments on clean energies could be made. And this is really important in the process of transition that we're living in. So this investment on innovation is a strategic component, fundamental to maximize the benefits of the transmission to all of those that can identify the opportunity, and that is going to be whoever has their mics on. Can you please turn it off? Okay, so let's go back to the ministerial meeting. At that time, we were able to present Brazil's number, but not enough. And we were a little frustrated on that. And we came back with this feeling, with this homework, where we needed to articulate and work with different actions. So please, Clarissa, transform uh, this gap was going to be giving an opportunity of investments in clean energy. We come back to Brazil, we design a conceptual project, and we invite CGE to present this project there, because with that we are able to detail all the project. And more than that, CGE has helped us find a partner to make it feasible, because it brought not only the expertise but resources that have mobilized all of the sector. And in this first step, we still have a lot to go through, but this is the first big push. So this project, this view, is exactly to show that it's feasible to reunite all of the partners, and it's good to have a dialogue that is productive with all of these institutions, so that we can, in a very short period of time, make the data available and consolidate it with information that is spread out in many parts, with different structures, with different ways. And we have to consolidate it in a fundamental way to really guide Brazil into another strategy, to take advantage of this capacity of Brazil to transform this into a very valuable and productive sector. So I would like to conclude saying that all of the institutions that were part of this project, we have a lot to do still, and we are very engaged in this effort to do all of this change and provide to Brazil and all its partners with the international agency and have more indicators and obviously a dialogue within all of the actors, all of the players that make this feasible. Thank you very much. I hope that EP continues to have this effort made. Thank you very much. Thank you, Tiago. As he said, the most important part is that's an opportunity for us to be together and develop this conceptual work. So I would like to call Márcio Miranda, who is the coordinator of CGE. Márcio, you have 5 minutes.
Muito obrigado, Clarissa. Muito bom
Thank you very
dia a
much,
todos os
Clarissa.
participantes
Good morning,
dessa
everyone.
nossa conversa virtual sobre um tema absolutamente crítico para a evolução não somente da
And
nossa
this is a
região, mas
very
do
critical
globo como um
situation, not
todo.
only for our
Eu queria
part of the globe, but
inicialmente
for
saudar
all of it. So I would like
efusivamente,
to
os parceiros que
start
nós
by
tivemos na
saying that
condução
I
dessa
am
etapa,
very
como muito
thankful
bem
for all of our
o
partners,
Tiago colocou, mas
like Tiago has
particularmente
mentioned,
a própria EPE,
particularly EPE.
o permanente engajamento da CEPAL em iniciativas
So
na região sobre temas de natureza
there are many
estratégica, como
initiatives
esse
and
que nós estamos lidando aqui, mas
strategies
somos
that we are
parceiros da
dealing
CEPAL em
with
várias
here.
iniciativas
There are partners with different strategies,
relacionadas
different initiatives
com
that are
a
related
promoção da
to
inovação
the
na
promotion
região
of
em temas
innovation in the region,
como esse que nós estamos tratando.
in topics such
Prazer
as this
também
that
estar
we're
aqui
dealing with today. It's a
tendo a
pleasure
possibilidade de
to be
interagir
with
com os
you
nossos
today,
colegas
having the
da Agência
possibility
Internacional de
of
Energia,
speaking with our friends
com quem nós
from
temos, inclusive,
the
colaborações em
National
andamento e
Energy
pretendemos, inclusive, intensificá-las em
Agency,
momentos
and we
futuros.
want to
Não podia deixar
have
também de
better
agradecer aqui a presença dos
projects in
nossos
the
colegas do
future.
próprio
And I couldn't
CGE,
forget to mention
que
our
se
friends from
dedicaram,
ECGE that have
em
dedicated
tornar uma
themselves very
ideia,
much
uma
and made
realidade,
this
como
idea
essa que
and
se
a
materializa agora
reality,
nas publicações que estão sendo
materializing itself in the
apresentadas
different
durante
publications and
essa
articles
nossa
that are
reunião.
being published during this meeting.
O Centro de Gestão e Estudos Estratégicos em
The
Ciência,
Center of
Tecnologia e Inovação
Management
está
of Science, Technology, and
permanentemente
Innovation and
atento e
Energy is permanently
buscando alternativas para fortalecer
trying to look for
iniciativas de
alternatives
ciência e tecnologia, mas
in science
particularmente
and
na
technology, but
inovação,
particularly in innovation.
como imagino seja do conhecimento de
As
muitos. O
it's
centro tem
the
se
knowledge
envolvido
from many of
fortemente,
you,
juntamente com o
we
Ministério de
were
Minas e Energia,
developing
com o próprio Ministério
with
de
the
Ciência, Tecnologia e
Ministry of
Inovação
Energy
e
and the
com a
Ministry of
permanente
Science and
participação do
Innovation
Ministério
and
das Relações
Technology.
Exteriores
And with that,
na promoção
the
da
Foreign
inovação no nosso
Affairs
país e em
Ministry have
colaboração
provided a
internacional em
lot
temas estratégicos.
of change
Assim é
in the
que estamos
strategic
e
programs.
podemos
And with that,
mencionar nesse momento já em estado
we
bastante avançado uma
wanted
nova
to
política de
mention
inovação para
that
o
we
Brasil
are during
e
our
uma consulta
innovation
ampla que está
system
sendo realizada nesse
and
momento
a great
para
consultation that is
fortalecer a
being
inovação
done
e transformar
to
agora
strengthen
a
the
política em uma
transformation,
estratégia nacional seguida de planos de
and
inovação
that
que com
is followed
certeza
by plans of
vão
innovation.
considerar iniciativas como essa,
And we are going to
no que diz
consider
respeito
initiatives such
à
as
condução
this.
de planos de natureza estratégica em setores
So we have
importantes para
different
o desenvolvimento
sectors that are
econômico e
really
social do país, da região e do
important
globo.
for the development of the region and of
Nos
the globe.
entusiasmou sempre muito de perto
we have
nossos colegas da CEPAL, em particular aqui, eu faço agradecimento ao
our
Carlos
colleagues
Mussi
from CEPAL,
pelo engajamento permanente da
have
CEPAL
had
nos
a lot
procurando e
of
nós
engagement
procurando
with
o Carlos
colleagues
Mussi para
from
darmos
CEPAL and
andamento
from
à iniciativa,
EG.
mas
So we
particularmente essas
always have
que
interacted a
buscam,
lot among ourselves to
como o
really
próprio
try
nome
to
diz,
strengthen
né,
our bonds
impulsionar,
and to
acelerar a
really
inovação
push
em trabalhos
innovation
de colaboração
in
internacional,
different
fazendo
collaboration
valer as
programs and making
complementariedades, as capacidades
this
nacionais em
different
torno dessas questões.
complementarities
Então, no
in
momento em que
this
essa
issue.
questão
So in
nos
this
foi
moment
trazida, nos foi colocada,
that we
nós não
are
podíamos deixar
talking
de
here,
abraçá-la
we couldn't
com
forget
grande
to
entusiasmo
really
e vimos,
make
tanto
this
na CEPAL
enthusiastic
quanto na
and
Agência
show how
Internacional
much
de
we are
Energia e na
happy
própria EPE,
in having
esse
this
ambiente
partnerships.
extremamente favorável
And
para fazer
this is
florescer
a very
essa iniciativa que
fruitful
acreditamos
environment.
seja
And we
uma
think that
primeira
it's the
etapa
best
de um
environment
movimento que
for
pode
us
escalar
to
e
be
alcançar, inclusive,
scaling this
objetivos
project and
mais
reaching
abrangentes no futuro.
objectives that
Estamos
are
extremamente
broader.
satisfeitos em ver
So
que
we're
aquelas ideias
really
iniciais
satisfied with the
prosperaram
initial
e, como nós vamos
ideas
ver
having
nessa reunião,
prospered,
nós
where we're
estaremos
going to see during this
tendo a
meeting
oportunidade de
the
ver,
opportunity of
assistir a
really seeing
apresentações sobre questões
many
que já foram
presentations
colocadas
on
relacionadas
things
ao
that were already
investimento, à
mentioned, that
inovação no
were already
setor de
discussed,
energia,
and the
a
development of the energy
maneiras mais
sector
adequadas de
is
lidar com
extremely important. There
indicadores,
are
com
not
informações
better
que nos
ways
permitam
to deal
acompanhar o
with this
progresso,
information
né, dessas
and to follow
iniciativas
this
nos
progress from the
ambientes em
different
que elas se
initiatives.
colocam e,
So,
particularmente, tratar em
particularly,
profundidade de mecanismos que fortaleçam,
different
possibilitem
mechanisms,
a inovação acontecer nesse setor.
and
Obviamente, com
the
engajamento
innovation can
muito forte
only do that
do setor
in that
produtivo,
way.
nesse movimento que o próprio setor
In
empresarial faz em
this
busca de
talk
tecnologias
with the
limpas para a
entrepreneurs,
produção de
with the
energia
different clean
na
energies that
escala em que os
exist,
países precisam para o seu
and the
desenvolvimento.
scale that the
Então,
countries
trata-se
need
de
is
uma
something that
iniciativa
really makes
nuclear,
us think,
com grandes
and it's
possibilidades
a
de
core
escalar e se
possibility
transformar em
and a way of
guias
scaling it
para
up to become
investimentos a partir de instrumentos
guidelines
modernos
on
de
investments,
financiamento e de
modern
gestão da inovação
investments,
no setor energético.
for us to
Então,
continue
nessas
innovating in
palavras
the
iniciais, eu
power and
não posso deixar de
energy
entusiasticamente agradecer
investments.
a
So
participação de o Thiago
I can't forget to
da
say
EPE, nossa
that
parceira,
our friend
desde que a EPE foi
EPE,
criada,
since
da CEPAL
CEPAL was
da Agência Internacional de
created,
Energia, nesse
we had this
esforço
partnership.
de trazer para um grande público as
So
iniciativas geradas nesse projeto. Eu fico
these
por aqui,
initiatives during this project
agradecendo a
are
todos os
amazing.
participantes e
And
devolvo a
I
palavra para a
stay here, I
Clarissa
finish
para
here,
dar
and I thank you
continuidade a
so
esse
much
momento de
for
abertura. Muito obrigado a
listening to
todos os
me. And I'm
participantes e
going to pass the
parceiros
floor
desse projeto.
to the host once again. Thank you very much, Márcio. CEPAL has entered in a very important moment in 2019 where CGE brought CEPAL with this partnership. So it's with a lot of pressure that I bring Timothy, who is the Secretary General and who's going to speak. Thank you so much.
To have these partners. CGE is an important institution in Brazil that has enormous works together with ECLAC, the Empresa de Pesquisa Energética, EPE. Thank you to be our partner, and also to work with the Energy Agency of the International Agency. Thank you very much of all of you. It's a pleasure to be working with you, honestly. And I want to put only that why this project is important. Because we have a complex problems in Latin America. The rate of growth is not improving. This crisis is impacting. We have to rethink about which type of recovery. And we think about which type of recovery for us, for ECLAC, and I think in many of your institutions, or all of you, I am sure that all of you agree that we need a recovery that has to be sustainable. And that is very important. That is very important. It's crucial. And for Latin America, sustainable means to change our energy matrix. This is an important point. We think that we need more efficiency, more support on production processes, more innovation, and so on. And that is crucial for our industrial system and for the life of every citizen in Latin America. But on the other side, we think that if we don't take seriously that the recovery needs to rethink about the development partner, we are going to make a mistake, okay? We are going to make a mistake again. And for us, for this new development pattern, it's really important. I want to be very clear to work a lot on energy. We need to think about energy, and we need to think about what type of energy that have to sustain sustainability and efficiency. And that is crucial one, and that is important for the whole region. In the next week, on Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, ECLAC is going to have what is called the Periodo de Sesiones. It's the biannual meeting of ECLAC, where ECLAC present to all Latin America the program of the institution and the proposal for the technical assistance for all countries. And the document that ECLAC is going to present in this meeting is going to call Building a New Future, Transformative Recovery with the Quality and Sustainability. And ECLAC in this document, in the chapter number 4, I want to invite all of you to read, choose different sectors where we need to work strongly, digital and so on. But there is one sector that we choose there in this document that is for us crucial, is energy. It's energy, but not only energy because we have own country, because energy is an enormous opportunity for regional integration. We show clearly in this chapter, if we have integration, energy is going to be used with more efficiency, energy is going to support sustainability, energy is going to support innovation processes. And for us, it's very important that this project in Brazil, and Brazil was the driver for this idea. Thank you very much to our partner in Brazil. Thank you to Itamaraty. Thank you to the Empresa de Pesquisa Energética, and also the CGE. With our friend institution that is EIA, that is the international agency, for us, I think I can speak for both, it's important to work together in the region. With the United Nations, for us, sustainability is crucial. Sustainability is part of the development. To be a partner of all you, of all of this institution, for us is an asset, and you can count with ECLAC every time. I invite all of you because this project that our office in Brasilia follow and support, it has been a very important input for our document that is going to be presented for the all countries in Latin America next week. Thank you very much for this input. Thank you very much for your partnership. And I hope that this is only the beginning for other projects and to support this initiative, political assistance, and that Brazil, in this case, could be a driver, a strong driver for the whole region. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you, Mario. Thank you for your words. It is really very important to have you on board. We have here two institutions, two international institutions, one regional and one more global. It is important that they are here with us because in this very interconnected world, we really do need to have more international cooperation, and we can take the opportunity of learning from other countries and in order to improve what we're doing internally. So with that in mind, we approached the IEA. And also on January 2019, that we had a meeting with Dave Turk, also in Santiago, to discuss how they could cooperate with us on this project. So it is with great pleasure that I call the Acting Executive Deputy Director of the IEA, Dave Turk, to speak. Thank you.
Obrigado, Clarissa, and obrigado to Tiago, Marcio, and Mario as well for your excellent framing comments for this important discussion today. I'm going to stick with three main points here and hopefully helpful to, along with the excellent comments already by my other three opening speakers to frame things for the discussion today. Let me start. Everything we've done at the IEA, analysis that we've done for 20, 30, 40 years, but especially some recent analysis, just points to the absolutely critical importance of innovation. Put simply, the world needs more innovation for energy, for clean energy transitions. A couple data points on that that might be helpful. We do an exercise every year where we look at sectors, technologies across energy, not just power, but industry, buildings, transport, cross-cutting technologies. And we see which of those technologies, which of those sectors is actually doing its share to get us to our Paris Agreement goals, to get us to our SDG goals, all the other goals countries, companies, populations around the world have set for ourselves. And out of those 46 technologies and sectors, unfortunately, only 6 of those, 6 out of 46 are actually doing what they need to do their share under our modeling assumptions to get us to the future energy world that we need. Second data point comes from our Energy Technology Perspectives 2020 report. All of this is on our website. Encourage folks to follow up further. If the world is able to get to net zero and to do it by 2050 time period, so very ambitious, very quick, but a number of countries are putting those kinds of targets on the table, 50% of the emissions reduction will come from technologies that aren't currently mature and aren't currently out there in the marketplace at price competitive levels. So there's an awful lot of innovation that needs to happen and needs to be done ambitiously and quickly if we're going to achieve our goals. The COVID-19 crisis, of course, is disrupting everything, all our lives, from the health side of things, from the economic side of things, and certainly in energy as well. And I think it's important for governments, companies, others to, even in the midst of this crisis, even in the midst of this challenge, to still put the innovation agenda incredibly high. It can be a driver for economic growth, for economic recovery, but also incredibly important going forward into the future decades as well. So that's my main point, just how important innovation is for the world. Second key point is Brazil is an absolutely critical player from the IEA, from IEA's judgment in energy, global energy, a very important partner, incredibly important partner for us at the IEA. And I would say for purposes of this presentation and this discussion today, an incredibly important player in innovation going forward. I'm sure I could roll out any number of dozens of examples throughout the energy space of Brazilian leadership in innovation, technology innovation, finance innovation, policy innovation, all of the terrific work that many of the organizations who are part of this effort and helping to convene this session today. A couple obvious examples come to mind. Certainly hydropower, Brazil is a leader, including in using hydropower throughout the system. Biofuels is another example. Again, I could go into other examples. So Brazil is absolutely a critical player in energy and innovation as well. From the IEA side of things, we value the partnership with Brazil, who's an associate member of the IEA, associate partner of the IEA, and we've only been strengthening that relationship, especially over the last several years. And we very much appreciate all the collaboration, Clarissa, with you, with Tiago, with colleagues across the Brazilian government, civil society, and companies as well. So that's my second point about just how important Brazil is, including for international innovation. Third point is specific to the Energy Big Push project, which we've been more than happy and eager to be a part of. And thank you, JB, for all your, John Baptiste, for all your work and other colleagues at the IEA side of things. We think this is an incredibly important step going forward in the Brazilian context. And we've already had a lot of lessons learned come out of this exercise that we're sharing with other countries around the world. So there's some really good lessons learned for other parts of the world. We've had terrific collaboration. We've focused on data, which is incredibly important. If you can't measure something, you can't provide thoughts of how to do this going forward. And we've had incredibly, from our perspective, impressive deliverables and discussions like the one that we're having today. So the IEA partnership, interest in working with Brazil, interest in working with the other organizations who are helping to organize this session is only stronger. As a data point there, we're a data-driven organization. I'll give you a data point there. Just the 2 webinars that we've been a part of just this month show our commitment from the IEA side to do what we can to be a helpful partner with all of you going forward as well. So let me stop it there. And again, thank you, obrigado, to all of you for the partnership and for the excellent discussion today. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dave. A gente falou muito agora de CGE, CEPAL, EPE.
We have talked a lot about CGE, EPE, IEA, ECLAC, but we need to recognize other institutions that have participated in the 4 work groups that were created: MME, MCTA, ANEL, ANAP, CNPq, EPEA, BNDES. So many people that are participating here, and it's a union from all of these efforts during this first project. So now we're gonna have a session where we're gonna discuss this effort. Normally it's 4 work groups, and now 3 of these work groups are gonna be here with us in this communication. Since we're a little bit late, I'm already gonna actually ask for the next lecturer to come here and use the floor. So Camila, you have 10 minutes to speak and do your presentation. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Clarissa. Thank you very much. Good morning, everyone. It's a great satisfaction to be here with all of you, be part of the council, the consulting council and the technical council and the energy big push. Today, I'm going to share with you some results, a synthesis of the energy big push, which is called the landscape of the investments in innovation and energy. So what is the total amount that we have invested in the Brazilian sector? What is the participation of the big push for sustainability in Brazil's energy sector? This question would not be answered a few years ago, like Thiago Barral had answered and said in the beginning. Indeed, the bases that exist still have been isolated in each part of the institutions and agencies, but exactly because of this difficulty to report the statistics in the international forums, we have had many other international agencies helping us to motivate us in this work group that has an objective to develop the collection, management of data, and orienting us with the energy in Brazil. I am here representing a very broad group of institutions and collaborators, and I am honored to share with you this result of this work group that I have participated in. So now talking about the methodological and the scope of this first work group, it's important for us to mention the importance of this partnership with the international agency and the classification of the PD different projects was developed by the international level energy classification. This classification follows the Frastat SIP on the OECD project. In this left hand here, we can see the classification and what part of the classification was used in this study. So we have 7 different categories for energy And also, we have 30 subcategories. It's important for us to mention that it is important to consider the fossil energy so that we can consider how much the clean energy is evolving comparing in with the international energy, since the international agencies apply this criteria as well. Okay, so the EPE in 2018 has done an estimate for 2018 with three different institutions, identifying these different criteria: BNDEE and BNDS, and the big push was pushed to the next years until 2018, bringing new institutions to the game. So we broadened this exercise and we developed our own methodology in the big push that uses our experience of CGE, which is the cycle of intelligence of CGE. And what are the institutions that were contemplated here? More specifically, the FNDCP, the FAPESP, the FINEP, and in the oriented works that are originally private but that are regulated in a public manner, the electric sector, they are obliged to destine part of their revenue for PND. We call that publicly oriented. That's why ANEL was a part of it, and ANP as well. So we have the statistics production in a very new way. And so we have several institutions that have a data bank that have been instituted here. And we can go to the next slide for me to continue. So let's go to these results. So the research, energy, and category, the majority of the public investments is turned to renewable energy, followed by fuel, fossil energy, and other technologies that are a little bit more universal. So in the right part of the graph, we can see that 70% of the public investments has with low carbon emission type of energy, but also the specific renewable energy are presenting a drop, and this drop has to do with some factors. The different problems that we have had with the PD&D and the economic crisis that we are facing since 2014. So do we have a notion of these public investments? This is a very Brazilian characteristics. After this, we're going to have a dense part of the presentation that is going to be mentioned later. But considering here the public data from 2018, the total investments of PD and energy was 656 millions. And when we consider ANEL and ANP, this goes to 3.6 billions. So this right graph on the bottom is showing that the total budget of the public institutions represents 19% of the total. So this shows the magnitude of these investments that are regulated by the public sector. You can go, okay, Barbara? Okay, and this graph shows a little bit how the investments are increasing total in total and that are publicly invested and public oriented. They have a very important bio fuel investment in geothermic, solar, and wind related. So at the end now, I would like to show you that there are many things for us to deepen in, many things to continue developing for the future. We're going to have more and more investment in PD&D and energy, and really making this big push procedure something that involves many institutions. This project has given a great start in governance projects, and so deepening it to the classification of the projects, how the criteria of search of has been done in each of the standards and institutions, and also the update and disaggregation and
novos
suspension
indicadores, né, que possam acessar os impactos, não só as fontes, mas os
of the
impactos desses
bases that exist now, where we
investimentos.
can access the impacts and the impact of this and bring new institutions, not only federal, but also
Representação de outros estados também, além da FAPESP, né, trazer também os fundos de outros estados, além das, enfim, o céu é o limite. Tem muito.
The sky is the limit. There's a
so
lot
the
to
sky
do.
is
The
the
work
limit.
being
There's
done
still a lot to be
has
done.
been very
This
interesting.
work was really
We understand
interesting,
it can
but we
grow.
know that this can expand and this
Two
can
other points. To
continue.
reinforce this governance
So to
process without
have this
which it would not have been
governance
possible to accomplish those
project,
results.
this
This
result
is a
would
great
not be
asset of the
possible.
project, and we in R&D and all partners consider that this must remain and be strengthened. Finally, through those statistics, today we can share this information in the regional scope and the international scope, besides strengthening our policies in innovation. So with this, I conclude my presentation, and I would like to pass the floor to Clarissa. Thank you, Clarissa. Very good. Your presentation is very important to show our methodology and our database. It's very important to understand how those figures are being approached, and improving this is one of the works we have ahead of us. Now we're going to access to Barbara Bressan with CGE is going to talk about. Clarissa, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I forgot to thank all the participants of this access, all the consultants, and this screen is here to show it. I'm sorry, I forgot to show it previously. And yes, it's very important to acknowledge everyone's participation, and there are many people involved. So now we're going to give the floor to Barbara for her presentation. Good morning, everybody. I'm very pleased to give this presentation today about the results of what we have called the access to of the Big Push project. And this access is focused on the analysis of performance indicators on low carbon energy sources. So here you can see the questions that guided our study, and the main purpose of this access was to establish a map of indicators in different dimensions of sustainable development so that we can assess the performance of low carbon technologies. Here on this slide, you have the solutions we selected to be a part of this study, biofuels, microgeneration of electricity, terrestrial transportation, and social, environmental, technical, economical factors. And you will see that in the report, we also pointed out the qualitative indicators, political, local and regional indicators. So here are some of the factors, some of the points we managed to strengthen. As Camila mentioned, all of the results are on the publication, in the publication, so it's important for you to access the website with the publications, with published papers. So download those so that you can see in detail how those indicators were built. So to generate electricity, for example, in the environmental aspect, we created this graph that shows the mitigation of greenhouse gas effects in generating electricity in terms both in micro generation or distributed generation. And here you can see that we did an assessment related to both greenhouse gas emissions in the operation of those micro power plants and those technologies, and in the life cycle as well, impacts on life cycles. So this is the evaluation and the mitigation of impacts on life cycles, considering different factors and different data sources. So one of the points we wanted to show in this chart is this dotted line on the left that you can see, and this shows the factor of emission of greenhouse gas effects, which is considered the lowest emission source of energy. So this chart shows the difference in the emissions by renewable sources and fossil fuel sources. In this chart, we show you the economical dimension of energy generation, in electricity generation. So we assess the input cost and the cost of investment in generation sources. And this chart shows the investment cost, the current cost, and the future cost, showing the potential of reduction of investment on those technologies. But there is another important indicator, that is the indicator of operational costs of those technologies. As you can see on the right, on the upper part of the slide, and there is a cost that we call leveled cost of technology, which considers different factors. And this calculation of how we reach this leveled cost, or even we may call it the total cost of power generation, it is in our report in the annexes and the attachments that you will find to this presentation. So if we look at the investment cost only, we'll see that natural gas thermoelectricity sources are advantages in comparison to other sources. But when we look at other indicators such as the operational cost and the indicator of a leveled cost of power generation, the thermoelectric natural gas source is at disadvantage. So the technologies of electricity generation by renewable sources are very competitive today, and economic reasons are not the main problem for us to escalate in our energy production by those sources. So looking at transportation, assessing the greenhouse gas effect gas emission and the non greenhouse gas effect emission sources, we looked at trucks, buses, and light vehicles, those that are moved by combustion or hybrid sources, power sources, which are the BEV we are showing here. So the dotted line on the left chart shows the transportation by combustion, the means of transportation moved by combustion. And this shows the advantage of hybrid or electric vehicles in comparison to those fossil fuel moved vehicles. And on the right, you see the aldehydes and non-greenhouse effect gas uh, source moved vehicles are at disadvantage. Sorry, they are at advantage regarding in comparison to those by moved by internal combustion. So this has a local impact, not only in terms of mitigation of greenhouse gas effect emissions globally, but the non-greenhouse effect emission gases have a huge impact in assisting and in helping to improve the local population's life quality. Here we show the economical dimension parts, which were also assessed. On the left at the top, you see the investment cost on technologies, both current and future. On the left at the top, you see operational costs, and below you see the total cost of transportation. Looking at this, looking at those categories, uh, we see when we look at the buses, it's interesting to see that the investment cost and buying a bus today is half the price of a bus moved by fossil fuel cost half the price of an electric bus. So when we look at operational cost, this chart is inverted. And looking at the total cost of those technologies, we can see that the electric buses and hybrid buses are already very competitive, more competitive than combustion moved fossil fuel moved buses. And collective transportation buses today are at the same cost as light vehicles, smaller vehicles. So we really do need to look at this and realize the economic factor today is no longer imperative for us to escalate on those technologies in our matrix. Here I am showing you examples of the economic dimension of biofuels. On the left top, you see the investment cost. On the right top, you see operational costs, and below you see the total cost for the use of those technologies. It's important to notice that those biofuel data were collected based on national sources. So this is very in synchronicity with Brazilian reality. So you see high investment on biofuel vehicles. We are investing on technology and innovation in this field. So today the bioethanol total cost is reduced. So this is also due to public policy created a few years ago, and that lasted for a long time and allowed bioethanol today to be competitive, even competing with gasoline. And some final comments. I think it's very clear to all that we can analyze those technologies further. And for this, we need to look at many indicators. It's important for us to do a transversal analysis of the indicators so we can understand the dimension, the whole dimension of this technology and its performance. Also, the indicators, this indicators map is one of the tools to support decision making. Logically, we have to consider the national reality or the local reality. Brazil is a continental country, so the regions are different. They have different climates, different natural resources, different human resources. So we need to take all of those factors into account. Furthermore, this study shows that something that we already know, which becomes evident, that is that there is no better technology than all of the others that shows superior indicators to all of the others. So for us to reach our SDGs and do energy transition, we need to combine technologies, and for this we need coordination of policies. So the coordination of policies, the coordination of actors, governance is very important. And those indicators show, due to the investment cost, current and future, they show that there is a lot of space for innovation to reduce costs and to improve efficiency of technologies. And this doesn't happen only due to the curve of learning of the market, but innovation has also a very important role in this sense. Camila mentioned in her presentation that working with data is very important. Thank you, Clarissa. Working with data is a huge challenge, and we need to improve quality of those data and comparability between technologies. It's important that those data are updated periodically so that we can follow the evolution and the development of those technologies. And it would be interesting for us to look at indicators to generate thermal electricity with new renewable resources using CCOEs, for example, and this would be a solution for other indicators. So I would like to conclude by thanking the consultants and participants of the work group 2. Their contributions were critical for us to reach those results. Clarissa, thank you. I have finished. Thank you. Very good. Your findings are very interesting, considering those different kinds of fuels. So I'm going to give the floor to Carlos Mussi about incentive mechanisms. He is the director of CEPAL Brazil. Thank you very much, Clarissa. Good morning, everyone. Would also like to thank Tiago, to greet Tiago, Marcio, Mario, and Daniel, who opened the event. I would like to thank you all the colleagues from CEPAL who are participating here. I can see the director of the field of sustainable development, José Samaniego, and other colleagues who are hugely supportive of our project, Luis Clinamirico, Ruben, with energy, with the energy sector. Thank you all, CEPAL colleagues, and a special thanks. I don't know if Camila, this name is directly linked to sustainable development. Camila Grinkov with our office was a very important person for all this process. And together with Camila Ferraz, and I'm sure there are other Camilas out there, they were very important for us to realize this project. If you hear airplanes in the background, we're not under attack. It's the Brazilian Air Force rehearsing a performance. So, and we, Clarissa and I, are right under their wings right now. So, two of the main axes in terms of data, methodology, indicators. Well, what why would how can we make those into public policies? We need to think in terms of incentive mechanisms. So the question to guide us is, what mechanisms can help us create a favorable environment for innovation with a sustainable energy matrix? We know that innovation occurs within an environment, a very specific environment that is complex, intricate, and dynamic, and there is and where risk and feedback are and return or are basically unknown. So Access 3 was trying to identify direct guidelines and indicators to accelerate the investment on clean energy in Brazil. Next slide, please. So we would like to begin following the lines of thought of Access 1 and 2, where we're trying to find out what already exists in terms of data analyzed, and we discovered that there is a huge variety of programs. Many of them are isolated, some are more integrated, and if we look at the attachments to this report, we will, in the list of what we managed to identify, I believe that this was a process, it was almost a detective work. So there are over 20 pages about this. So there are many specific mechanisms for us to promote. There are huge work. There's huge work about electrical energy and others, and we have to recognize that the electricity sector in Brazil and others in general have always been the avant-garde of investment in energy in Brazil since the 1950s, 60s, 70s. So the sector, even though the general planning of the country has been a little dismantled along the years, this sector has remained strong, and this energy, for example, EPE is a result of all of those efforts. So it would be a left end in terms of planning. And Barbara mentioned this work. Camila also mentioned it. It's necessary to coordinate all of those instruments. Well, in face of this huge variety, we looked at the international experiences. So, and previous one, please. It, we looked at the support of the International Power Agency, Energy Agency, that has its indexes, rates in terms of energy generation. So we were looking at the leaders in terms of clean energy. We have the UK, EOLEC which is a leader in EOLEC offshore, Denmark with EOLEC with biofuel, Japan with solar energy, Norway with hydropower, Chile right next to us here produces solar power, and we're we even joke that they will end up shutting down the Atacama just for power, and then we don't know how tourists will react to that. Anyway, we have many mechanisms that are very important in terms of the continuity and permanency of power generation. So in Brazil, we see many compulsory funds for power production, energy production, that subsidize our initiatives, our investment. Other countries have more permanent, more well-structured systems. So what we have, if you allow me this image, looking specifically at the list, the huge list on this report, it's like a menu that is continually being updated for those who have been to United States snack shops. You'll see the menus have 10 pages and there's a little bit of everything. So hence the need for us to improve our products. We have seen that Brazil has many funding sources, where there is a certain discontinuity, but there is institutionality in all of those initiatives. Some of the countries that have specific results show the importance of this continuity in investment, and the data that in the beginning Camila Ferraz showed us, the trend of reduction in investment shows that this could be an essential moment, and we need to have continuity. We need to persist in innovating. Next slide, please. So what can we propose in terms of methodology to create incentives? This is essential because it's not just the matter of discussion between agents on innovation. It's how to confront budgetary areas and management areas of the government that make those measurements in the short, mid, and long term. So we have to begin to think about new strategies. We have to think that in the long term, we may be all dead, but the energy will still be here. And we have to leave a structure, competitive and productive structure for the next generations. Otherwise, we cannot think of a country that can add value and develop continuously. So we need long-term strategies such as climate plans, technology plans, and national plans that are relevant. So I will even dare here to mention we should include the Amazon. How can innovation in energy help us improve the management of the Amazon resources. This is a strategic thing we should be thinking about. So of course, in this strategic level, we have to consider the word that has been mentioned here often and will always be mentioned when we talk about resources, which is the word coordination. Having ministry coordinator is the rarest thing in the ministries. It's very rare for us in Brazil in our ministry to have actual coordination. So we had need to coordinate between the ministries, and we need coordination between the ministries and the universities, maybe having a committee of power production, energy production, something that can encourage the design of policies and be a forum of exchange of information. Because what happens is when we talk about resources, we have people in different boxes and they don't talk to each other. So people represent their own boxes, and those boxes don't grow in society, that cannot see the results, or there are no results. So we have to think about roots. This means creating a methodology among all the works that have been shown, and creating, I don't mean by methodology copying methodology from each other, but instead having stages uh, where we can have accountability, transparency, control, because this is very important, not only for us to have a final product, but to validate it amongst other governmental areas or departments and society. How can we think, for example, in terms of hydrogen as a possibility? Maybe this is a little bit far from us today, but we need to start today. How can we put this, confront this with other short-term needs uh, that the government identifies or the universities identify? And the level of policies that we have today in terms of strategic policies. So the main conclusions, we must have incentives as tools. We must have significant and continuous public investment, and balanced combined incentives. We have to support always all the stages of development. For example, we have to look at what doesn't seem viable today and what does seem viable today, and try to coordinate that. And this is very connected deeply to innovation. So we need a broad state coordination to support this big push. And of course, the two most important words in big push towards sustainability are coordination and articulation. So not only the resources, we must be able to manage it. As policymakers, we must show that we have this coordination and this articulation. Finally, I would like to thank all of those who participated in this group, especially Camila, Carmen, Danielle, and all of those mentioned in this list, Maíra, and so on. Jean-Baptiste, Marcela, thank you all, and sorry for taking too much of your time. Clarissa, the floor, you have the floor. Thank you, Claudia. Really, this comment on yours about different departments, different sectors not talking, it's very important that you mentioned it. It's very important for us to make this, and this is why we're doing this project, to get everybody to talk. And the challenge is huge, as well as the noise of the Air Force airplanes flying right behind me. Every time I speak, it seems they fly over me. So I'm going to give the floor to the next speaker about perspectives in energy production. Thank you very much. And it's my pleasure to give this presentation about the four speakers before me. We have representatives of research, managers in terms of ANEEL, and the policy formulation, EMBRAPI. We also have the international agency. And I am the one who will have to control the time now. So I'm going to give the floor to Fernando de Negri. Fernanda is one of the biggest researchers in terms of R&D in Brazil, and I had the pleasure of meeting her a few years ago and learn about the great work that she did in IP and the ministries, especially the Ministry of Science and Technology. If there is someone who knows the figures and the policies in R&D in science and technology, this is Fernanda, and it's very important for us to give her this space to speak. I'm very proud of giving her the floor so that she can comment on the results of our project and give us her comments and suggestions. Fernanda, you have the floor. Thank you very much for the presentation. It's very kind of you. Good morning, everyone. I would like to congratulate all of you, first of all, for your work for CEPAL, IPE, CGE, and the National Energy Agency. I had the opportunity of reading this report yesterday. It is very good. So really, I'm really happy. Congratulations. I think this really points to a very interesting future that needs to be pursued. I'm going to share my screen with you. If there's anything you can't see, please let me know.
Tá ótimo. Beleza. Então, eu vou falar um pouquinho sobre inovação para sustentabilidade. Eu acho que já foi mais do que dito aqui, que em outras palavras, mas que a inovação, na verdade, está no cerne de uma agenda de desenvolvimento sustentável. E para inovar, eu acho que a gente precisa...
We need to take into consideration a few important elements. We need qualified people, we need infrastructure for these people that work, and we need a very favorable environment. In Brazil, we have several very important aspects, and each one of these elements are really interesting. So I'm going to talk about each one of these elements and sustainability, okay? So qualified people, we have advanced a lot in Brazil to increase education, but we still have a lot of problems in being absolutely interesting for the PISA. And although we have advanced in this, we still have problems of quality, and there are numbers of scientists, of engineers that need to be brought in, and for us to continue innovating. This graph that appears down below in this slide shows the number of scientists and researchers by numbers of millions of inhabitants. I think that this data is unupdated, and it's a very lower number comparing to other countries in the world. And I think that that should be put into place. And in the point of view of areas of knowledge, maybe it's something that we can calibrate a little bit better. We see that these numbers are just to compare Brazil to other countries. We have here the innovation, sustainable innovation knowledge in many areas of knowledge all around the world. This is something that OECD publishes this indicator every year, and I compare it in the different levels. And in this sense, I think that we need to think about the engineering areas, and this is not only in the discussions of the human sciences. Our graduation and post-graduation is going on the direction that are fundamental for innovation. I hear someone with their mic on.
Científica e tecnológica para que essas pessoas qualificadas
I want these people to work and to think together in the point of view of oh, is this going to stay only in the university? There are many countries that are working together with a more advanced systems of innovation. I only put Germany and the United States here, but they have specific areas of expertise and of research. That is why I put them here because they are great university with great scalability of production, with many researches and with specific problems focus. We have some institutions here, Embrapa, Senipen, and Fiocruz, that help us very much, but we still have a lot of challenge in building an infrastructure that is broader and research, technological research, and laboratories that are extremely important for all of us. In IPEA, we did a study with the understanding of what the different institutions were doing. And what we saw is that what we saw in our laboratories is that we work with among 5 to 6 researchers each, and this scale is extremely important for our economy and for the scientific scenario as well. So the same thing comes for renewable energy. Ismar Santos, when I came to IPEA, we published this book that shows that the majority of the research areas are for small researches. At that time, we did some value analysis where we have the cost of more than 3 million reais, and that is very low. In 2012, that is when we did this research, but now it's updated. Those are small companies. That is an evidence of this small scalability of the Brazilian research that we would need to overcome. We also need to have an environment that is favorable for to innovation. This starts with the different businesses that have different businesses and they're relevant and that show that we can be really dynamic in building new businesses, but there are discussions in regards to patents and tax revenue, how much they privilege one or the other. We have an explicit policy that can make the innovations something more relevant. These norms also are extremely important. And in a sense, they are doing an innovation and they have
fala que normas e regulações são um dos maiores motivadores das inovações ambientais, das eco-inovações no mundo todo. No Brasil não é bem assim. No Brasil você tem outros fatores
of our innovation. We have many areas that we can deepen our knowledge and our regulation in the sense of stimulating innovation in the sustainability form as well. We have also seen a very closed economy, and there are many people that don't agree with this, but if we look at the high flow and the GDP, Brazil is still very closed as a country. So we have many aspects still to grow. We have a high number of competitors that limits our domestic market, not only for the opening, but for the origin of businesses. We have several barriers in the entrance of Brazilian scenario that needs to be reduced. And when it comes to innovation, so competition is something that we need to think about when we talk about innovation, and also our access to technologies that are developed abroad our access to that and is very small. This is something that we need to overcome
Enfim, eu
in the
queria falar
long run.
de políticas públicas. Acho
And
que várias
to the last but not least, we have spoken about the importance of coordination of policies and public investments. This is fundamental for us to build limitations for sustainability, for us to do a lot of innovations. And we see that the majority of this innovation is done on the first part
olhar o período de
of the investment. And if we look at this, this can be even worse with time. I am an economist that think about all of the levels of investment, and this investment is without any precedent if we compare it to any other countries. Even Greece and its fiscal development dropped less than 10%, but in Brazil, this is in the order of 40%, and this is huge. This lack of stability in the financing, it corrupts the capacity of the science, technology, and innovation in the country to produce knowledge in a sustainable manner. So down here, we have an increase of the resources that are private, but they're coordinated by the public sector, for example, by the NIEL, ANEL, but it's by far not enough to balance the drop that we have in volume of investments that we have in Brazil. Even in Petrobras, we talk about that here, the ones that we manage here in the area. Petrobras, for example, has reduced 40% of its investments in the last years, which is really important for the energy sector because Petrobras, in a way, was one of the greatest investors of infrastructure and research in the energy area, and it maintained this infrastructure really well updated. And in the sense of making it more effective in a more innovative way based in energy, shows that there is a shortened of many investments and resources for the research and investments. And we see that since 2015, and with the crisis that we know, but it has been made and has been seen for the first time in 2017, the first research in 2017 with IBGE, we have seen that it has dropped very much. So before it was 2.17% of the GDP, and now it's 0.55% of the GDP. So that really drains the amount of investments that we face. So it was from the order of 40% in 2011, 2014, and it dropped to 24%. I don't have the exact number in my head, but it has dropped at least half of the investment. The investment in PED has also dropped significantly. And this is something that we need to be careful and look at that and try to really solve these issues. So, to end, I would like to say that one of the things that I found extremely interesting in the report is that it points to the future. It points to a sustainable future, and it is a very promising future when it comes to the sustainability in energy in Brazil. But I really do think that for us to look at this future and really effectively be the country of the future, we need to bury this
cotidianamente
old
de desrespeito à
past that
ciência e
we
ao
have behind us and that doesn't really respect the environment, the populations, the indigenous populations. And this is something that we need to solve as a
efetivamente
country, as a whole, for us to effectively look at this future that we point out in this report, which is really promising, I think. Thank you very much, Fernanda. I think that you have proved our characteristic of having the greatest economist here with us, with this analysis that you have made. Thank you very much, Fernanda. I think that you have really given us, provided us a great quality understanding of the whole scenario.
Ver agora
Now,
o outro
I'm
lado.
going to pass the floor
Né?
to everyone that
E,
is
e aí queremos saber o
here
que
with
a
us
regulação
now, and I want to know what can the regulation of the sector do, and what is the perspective of the investment in ANEL and Sesumis and all of the information that you can provide me with for this project. Thank you very much, Aurelio. Now the floor is yours. Thank you very much, Musi. Thank you, Fernanda, for once again having such a great presentation to provide to us. So I would like to say hello to everyone and to say that it's a great opportunity to indeed be here and to share this moment together and update our knowledge. And looking for this partnership in this sector is amazing. So on the agency side, there's an importance and relevance of this topic. I'm going to share my presentation.
Estão vendo?
Can you see it?
Tá ok, né?
Sim, sim.
Bom,
Okay, right? Okay.
como o Carlos já tinha me apresentado, desculpa. Eu sou o coordenador do programa de pesquisa e
I am
desenvolvimento.
the coordinator of the program of research and development regulated by ANEL.
Eu vou falar, dar uma geral sobre o programa, né, de onde surgiu o marco legal regulatório, a origem e distribuição dos recursos.
And I'm going to talk about the legal framework, the origin and distribution of resources and investments and topics from 2008 to 2019, the graphs that Fernanda has presented, actually, the relevant results, and the regulated panorama of PD&D, and where do we intend to go, the improvement of the regulation. So this program was created with the application of the law 9991, and it's a great stimulation for the research and development in the efficiency, the power efficiency, and it has established a regulation and implementation by ANEL. And the current regulation was published in 2016, and I think the objectives of the regulation is to really incentive the results and the resources, so to establish guidelines and focus and innovation in a sustainable way. We try to spread all of the results from our projects, and those are the consumers of the electric energy that provide us with the different initiatives that are implemented. What the law brings to us since 2012 are different roles for what we are destined to. And
e Inovação, uma parte
what we see in the Ministry of Innovation and Technology is that a part is in the specific companies, the other ones is for ProCell, the PD ANEL, and the PE for ANEL as well. And this total is the amount that we are able to provide with our resources that are obligatory. And with this program, we have different percentage of distribution in the segments. This distribution is worthwhile until August this year because it was published 998, where we have another part that we're going to distribute as well from now on. In terms of amounts, considering the operation and what we have predicted for 2020, what was collected was 1,723,000, and we have also 344.67 for FNDCT. MME, we have 172.36, and the other ones are distributed almost in the same way. So the part that Fernanda has mentioned was the investment on PED from 2008 to 2019 that we have registered in our data bank with different projects that have compromised a lot of our projects, and Fernanda has shown that as well. So after that, we have these peaks that have occurred during this period due to complication of strategy in the investments. And when in regards to PD&D, 1/4 has been directed to alternative sources of and power generation. So there on second place, there is another one that is related to smart grids and other technologies that are developed for the sector, which is this other. And extracting from this, which was already charged from this report, we have 345 patents, intellectual property that were registered, almost 5,000 scientific work that were published internationally,
ambientais,
1,550 social impacts, social environmental impacts, and also 1,637 titles of post-graduation, lato and stricto sensu, and almost 10,000 researchers that have acted in these projects from 2008 to 2019. And what we put here as a highlight are the investments that were more effective and that are related to the strategic project. When ANEL defines what we should invest in and publishes a call that is provided for the companies, and we approve that in parts of the distribution. And we do that since 2008, but from the other publications on, the adhesions started to really make a change. And in 2012, we had the biogas introduction. And in 2014, we had the iolic implementation and LET. And in 2016, we had the storage law, where we got the adhesion that was really elevated as well. And at the end of 2018, after a great time of support and of publications of the different public consultations that we did, We have brought all of the institutions and the providers to be with us and provide their support. And as a panorama in what we faced during these years that was published in June, and in the law, we have had the liberty of choice in the companies that are regulated. It has a participation from the academia with the power sector, the electric power sector, and we have increased the laboratory infrastructure of Brazil, and we have more users with the new technologies. And for these products and technology in the phases of the regulation, they are all contemplated there as well. And now we can see some points that we can advance in. One is regarding the criteria of evaluation that are related to the academic performance, and also a very spread out evaluation with individual project where we cannot see a systemic understanding from the program as a whole and the strategy of this policy. Another issue that we need to be careful about is the startup services that is going to allow us to increase our volume of work. And another thing that we have to think about is how to really motivate people with raffles and prizes, things like that can demonstrate their performance and provide something back for them. And with that in mind, all of the activities that we do is really rethink about the activities that we have. There was the publication of the law in the last 20 years. We have several resolutions that were published and procedures. And in 2009 was when we got the innovation, 2012, sorry. And the law 13,203 is when we started to think about that. And 2016 is when we got the resolution, and 2018 we started to rethink the model of the sector. The sector as a whole started to think about what they needed to do, seeing trends that were being presented right in front of us. And because of their being innovative for the sector and modernizing the sector, it was going to be interesting for us to do the same. And with this number of subsidies, we started bringing all of that inside the regulation. And this year was dedicated to have a new proposal of improvement. And this proposal, it was put here last year. It has three axes. The first one is to provide the innovation and application of the PED&L program, and then the increase of effectiveness of the program from the creation to innovation. We have discussed a few instruments to promote this innovation and also enable new products and services with the greater potential of the market of insertion in the market. And the last axis is the regulation itself that needs to be innovative to really spread that in an adequate manner. So we need to provide this change internally from the companies to have sustainable actions from the sector itself. We are in this process right now. We are almost done in this minute, and we are going to open for the public consultation until December. and until December 16, the energy sector is going to, the power sector is going to show a few scenarios for the program to evolve through these instruments. And we, in this chronogram, in this agenda, we can see these contributions and analyze them, put them in the report. And we're going to have a new norm that is going to be finished until December from 2021. And in June 2022, we are probably going to publish this new rule for the program. And with that, to start following all of the projects, do a result analysis for us to start. And basically, that is it. We don't want to predict the future. We just want to allow it to be possible, just like Antoine Exupéry said in The Little Prince. Thank you very much, Aurélio. I'm go out to say that you have brought a few important points on how the financing sector funding of the project took place. And thank you very much for everything. Now I'm going to pass the floor to Flávio Olivieri from Embrapi, who is going to talk about his challenges, not only innovation in energy, but also
Not only innovation in
changes as
energy,
a
but
whole.
also innovation in general. What other projects do you have in innovation, and what are the mechanisms and opportunities Embrapi is offering to innovation? We have a little less than 10 minutes because we're running short of time. So please, Fabio, you have the floor. Please go on. Good morning. Thank you, Melissa. Good morning, everyone. On behalf of Embrapa, I would like to thank you for the opportunity to show you a little bit about of our model and show you our experience in supporting projects in this area. Embrapi is an OS, and the funds we dedicate to R&D come from the Ministry of Science, Technology and Innovation, the Ministry of Education, and in the future, the Ministry of Health as well. Besides, the Embrapi funds come from two priority programs. One is the PPI in terms of R&D on advanced manufacturing, and the other is RT30, which is the mandatory expenses on part of companies of private sector on R&D. The focus of Embrapi is industry innovation. That means the mechanism used to support companies is to encourage their interaction with the set of assigned institution. We have 61 assigned institutions that aim to provide technological solutions to the company. So Embrapi is very focused on helping the productive sector to innovate. And with this, we highlight a few interesting aspects of the model, which are the leveraging of private sector funding, meaning the funds that come from the MCTI and the Ministry of Education. This leverages the private sector funds, and Embrapi today has over 1,000 funded projects in a total of 1.6 billion reais, and of this amount, over 45% are for the private sector that are conducting research, and we're dedicating those funds to those results. It's important also to highlight that all the results of those projects on R&D, RD&I accomplished by Embrapi and in partnership with those companies are focused on the market, meaning they do generate results that tend to be applied in the market, whether they are new products, new processes, or both. Specifically, if we think in terms of renewable energy and sustainability and areas that are impacted, that cause environmental impact, over 200 of our over 1,000 projects are aimed at sustainability and renewable energy. Of those 200 such projects, we're talking about over 1 billion invested in projects to search for solutions in these areas. So 23% of entire Embrapi is dedicated to renewable resources and sustainability. It's important to point out that when we talk about renewable energy and sustainability, which is one of the fields that Embrapa is dedicated to, these areas are considered prioritary, so we tend to meet the demand of the private sector that considers this a priority. So the projects regarding sustainable energy engage wind power, solar power, and others. We always support those companies that seek this kind of technological development. So if we look at solar power, for example, solar energy, one of the projects, one of the lines of projects developed in this sense is related to the development of solar panels with different application, diverse applications, microgeneration, integration of this microgeneration to the power net, and the measurement of this energy. In terms of wind power, we have many projects aimed at the development of uh, helixes or generators specifically designed for the Brazilian reality. So this is very important. That also concerns inverters and the connection to the grid. Also, in terms of biomass, we have second and third generation technology treating solid waste for power generation. We have uh, technologies to generate alternative energy based on Brazilian biomass production. So one of the projects that's very important for us is the development of the structure for sustainability to sustain the entire sector of electric cars or the gentrification of the transportation structure. So we need to change our national system of transportation to include renewable energy, clean energy sources. So we have a sector entirely dedicated to this. And this project regarding biomass is very interesting. And I like to mention and highlight is the project developed between Annex, which is the RDNI Votorantim sector, Votorantim RDNI sector. And this project aims at the development of the entire biofuel structure of Votorantim. So instead of exploring mines, Votorantim instead is using the result of this project, which is adapting their equipment to biofuel. So you have a large company developing a project with a startup company that is dedicated to improve the use of bioenergy and use of renewable energy in Votorantim's equipment. Another project I like to highlight, I think is very interesting, is the development of accumulators for electric vehicles. There is a line of development of technology, over 10 projects that develop uh, accumulators without batteries for electric cars. And there is a huge range of projects aimed at dedicated to renewable energies and sustainability. And I think it's important to highlight, as I already have, that we have over 1,000 projects to those. And of those thousands, almost 350 use funds that are mandatory funds coming from companies from the private sector, that they are obliged to dedicate those funds to development of technology. So we have all those projects being developed within the Embrapa system, and those companies are dedicating those resources to this research. And the amount invested by those companies surpasses over 50%, is about 55% of our total funds. So the factor of multiplication, of leveraging the public funds dedicated to our DNI is much larger through the leverage of given by the private sector. So we have a greater diversification of those projects in terms of structure and coming from research from funds by the private sector. So when we talk about mandatory funds, those projects involve more than one company. For example, if we look at ANEEL, we have many companies that distribute electricity, and they're doing projects with our community of startups and micro companies, small companies that are providing support to those large distribution companies in the field of development and supply and distribution of this of energy through this technology. There is a huge interaction between the companies that needs to that need to invest those resources and the companies that are in the productive chain, uh, that then this elevates the capacities of both the research and the application and the applying companies of those technologies. So this is a still underused capacity that where we can improve, we can have a stronger interaction between companies that are in the productive chain. So there's a huge possibility. It's a very efficient and interesting possibility for us to think of mechanisms for those mandatory resources being invested in RDNI, and this would produce larger interaction between the productive sector and the productive chain, and this would elevate our technological capacity of all of us, and not just a set of companies. So this is a very interesting step that we're trying to take, obviously talking to ANEEL for a while and then ANP for a while to try to consolidate a specific model where those funds can promote technological innovation in this sector as a whole. So I think I didn't use up 10 minutes. Thank you very much. Thank you, Fabio. Thank you, even. I would recommend you to take the public consultation with Aurelio because you have examples of startup companies with mandatory funds from the private sectors. I think you already have found a very interesting pathway to follow. Thank you very much. And now we're going to look at the global challenge about innovation, electricity and generation of other energies that are being developed around the world, and trying to compare those and measure them to comparison to ours. So we have our colleague Jean Baptiste from the International Agency, and Jean Baptiste, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, and thanks to everyone for being here. It's really great to see many faces that I recognize on this call. So great questions, Carlos, and generally speaking, I think that the topics that are addressed today, no country has all the good answers to these questions. The questions of how you track progress of innovation, how you set good priorities, these are all good questions. And so the IA is learning a lot through this collaboration with Brazil. And what we learn in Brazil is actually useful to other countries. So, so this conversation in that regard is really great. So there's basically two things that I kind of wanted to mention. The first one was to agree with what Fernanda was saying earlier. Namely, there is no single indicator that can track innovation, and you need to use several of them. And I'm going to come back to that. And the second one was, we talk about tracking innovation, we talk about accelerating innovation, but these things are really hard. And Energy Big Push shows that it was actually very hard to collect the data, put everyone around the table, and so on. And so because it's hard, it's good to start now. So I'm going to go in these two thoughts. So the first one, there is no single indicator to track innovation. So what we've been seeing with other governments is that many countries want to accelerate innovation, but most of the time what we look at is inputs to innovation, such as the funding for R&D. but actually taking a systems approach to innovation, namely looking at all the components that are useful to innovation, maybe stands better chances than only a few indicators. And so many of these indicators, Fernanda and Fabio were also mentioning. And for example, if we look at bioethanol development in Brazil since the 70s, many things influenced innovation. And so by just looking at one indicator such as funding, we're not going to have the full picture. So in 2 to 3 weeks, the IEA will be publishing a report exactly on that, on tracking clean energy innovation, with some ideas of the main issues with that, the main difficulties, and also long lists of possible metrics that can be used. And I just wanted to illustrate some of these right now. We can use metrics, and governments may use metrics for many possible questions. For example, are we providing enough resources to innovation? EPE at the moment is working on the long-term energy strategy for Brazil with many goals up to 2050. So up to 2050, we will need more innovation and probably new technologies to achieve these goals. How do we make sure that we are investing in the right areas? And so that's a first question. We can use metrics such as public funding for R&D, private funding for R&D, and where these things are allocated. Are we spending in the right areas? And then something that Fernanda was mentioning is, do we have the people working on these projects? Do we have the human capital, the researchers, and so on? But that's really only one question, right? We could also be wondering, are we creating knowledge? And then we can look at academic publications and patents, just like Aurelio was mentioning at ANEL. But there's also more to that. Are these ideas reaching markets? And then we could look at the new prototypes, the demonstration projects, the number of new products that are on the markets, the number of startups, for example, and this is something that Fabio was also mentioning. We could look at how much venture capital activity is going on in that country. And we could also even look at the longer term picture. Is this market growing? And is innovation delivering on long-term goals? And so then you can look at the cost curve. This is just something Barbara was saying earlier, that bioethanol managed to become so cheap in Brazil because of decades of sustained support for this technology. You can also look at the deployment trends for new technologies, emerging technologies, and whether Brazil, for example, manages to export new technologies rather than import existing technologies from abroad. And then you can also ask other questions, such as, which part of the supply chain should we focus on? So let's just look at the example of biofuels. Advanced biofuels can be used for long distance transport, planes, shipping, and so on. But when we talk about advanced biofuels, are we talking about the production of the fuel, the infrastructure, the engine for the planes and the ships and the cars? All of these things should also be measured for priority setting, because otherwise we may dilute some resources that are already constrained. So this was the first thing I wanted to say, leading to the second. I gave many examples of possible questions and possible metrics here, but obviously this is very hard. It is not possible to answer all of these questions at once. And when we talk to various partners of the IEA, whether other emerging economies such as China or India, or if it's, for example, the European Commission, they all have the same questions. And what should you track first? Data collection requires resources, which we saw with Energy Big Push. It took a lot of time to find the right estimates and methodologies for just a few indicators, right? So maybe one way to get started, and this would be maybe my thinking for the next steps and some recommendation, how do we actually start? I think it's a good opportunity to include tracking in the next programs of R&D that are coming up in Brazil. So for example, EPE is developing the PNE 2050, and this plan is an energy plan, it's not an innovation plan. But once it's translated into an innovation plan, maybe there can already be some metrics inside. What are the goals that we want to achieve precisely, and how are we going to measure progress over time? And then every year, every 5 years, we can reassess. How are we doing? Are we creating enough knowledge where we wanted to create knowledge? Are we bringing the new products that we did want to bring to the markets, and so on? A second example would be ANEL's R&D program. And Aurelio mentioned the public consultation coming up. And this is a great opportunity to make sure that we're tracking the right things. I remember in the first webinar we organized earlier this month in October, one person was saying, in Brazil, we have a lot of publications, but we have few patents, and then these ideas don't reach the market. So this means maybe the things we should be measuring are to what extent are we bringing these things to the market? So the bottom line here is that there are opportunities in the near term, in the next 6 to 9 months, with existing policy plans in Brazil to maybe include some of these metrics and start the processes to collect data over time. And only if we start now can we actually next year, in 5 years, in 10 years, assess whether these things were effective, were useful, and how do we reallocate resources. So the IEA doesn't have all the answers to these questions. And this is why this work in Energy Big Push has been incredibly interesting. And do know that a lot of other countries are actually watching what's happening in Brazil, because this is useful to many other countries. And now we're having other countries asking, oh, how are you actually tracking innovation in a country like Brazil? So I'm more than happy to continue to engage with the various partners here on the line, but also any other institution that has an interest in tracking innovation, because this is definitely an important topic, and more than happy to take it forward. And on that note, I'll give it back to Carlos, hoping that we have enough time for the rest of the event. Thank you very much.
Okay, Jean-Baptiste, thank you very much for your comments. I think you ended with a good word, tracking. It's being used a lot these days in terms of tracking other things, but it's something that we have to learn how to track really. Where does it start? Where does it spreads? And who gets it? And what are the results at the end? So I think tracking, it's a good word for our next step in the project. Eu vou passar a palavra agora de volta a Clarissa para que possamos fazer.
I'm going to give the floor back to Clarissa now so that we can conclude. We are really running out of time, and I would like to thank Fernanda and Álvaro, etc., Jean-Baptiste, and all of our colleagues for their participation. Fabio, everybody here. Clarissa, please, you have the floor for the wrapping up of our event. Thank you also for your participation and the participation of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Thank you, Carlos. Yes, in fact, we won't have time for more, but we had very good, robust participation and very high-level comments in the chat. So I hope that we can survive without those questions. So let's wrap up. Camila mentioned this idea of taking this project to a process. Carlos mentioned the importance of coordination between ministries and among ministries, and Fernanda talked about investment opportunities. So those contributions were very important. So we're going to, before we conclude the event, we would like to hear the ministry. Eduardo Soriano, the director of the Department of Structure of the MCTI. Soriano, good afternoon, everybody. It's a pleasure being here, and thank you for the invitation. Many important things were discussed, but there are some things that have been happening currently that are very important. The federal government has been investing in the improvement of the environment of the innovation ecosystem. So since 2016, a landmark a legal framework was created. Some questions are being solved, such as how to leverage pilot projects and demonstrative projects. Often in our country, we are able to prototype and develop technology, but when we start demonstrating, when it's time to demonstrate and involve the companies, private companies in the demonstration of pilot projects, this is a problem. So to solve those problems, for example, Embrapa was created. So today we work with we're working on new policies, new national policies on innovation and incentives to startups, because it's very important to have an innovation environment that facilitates innovation and investment in those processes and interactions of the PCTL. We had huge red tape here, which was a problem. The legal landmark has improved this environment a lot, but this year we're going to launch the national policy on innovation that will open new opportunities for us. Another important point is that the federal government in the scope of the MCTI is looking at new opportunities for investment, new sources of funding, so that the federal government through the ministry, because the federal government it cannot afford all of the investments necessary. So we can look at other kinds of funds, new sources of funding, because we need to form baskets of investments, if you will. Another important point we are working on is on enabling technologies. So we're looking at sets of technologies to enable uh, the production of renewable energy and basic energy such. Well, so we're looking at how to try to build in our ministry a set of robust mechanisms and instruments, technologies and infrastructure to improve this innovation ecosystem. I think it was very interesting, this matter, the question of ANEEL, the question of strategies that have induced cooperative projects, and this focus on innovation that's very important. Also, the matter of regulation. So an important thing was mentioned here, which is the matter of the Committee on Energy Innovation. A huge debate is taking place within the MCTI and the ANEL on how to promote better interaction. And regarding the project, we see that there are hidden information regarding the laws on information, and this would facilitate investment on renewable energy production. So we have maps of investment on energy and clean energy, for example, Embrapi on agro energy. We need to capture those state investments. We have many foundations that support research with not so robust investments such as FAPESP, but they are also important. So what I would like to say here is that we are working on the development of an environment for innovation, trying to facilitate relations. We know that in the past few years, the contingency mentioned was very strong. On the other hand, we had many opportunities that were maybe not sufficient to compensate. So the focus on innovation by the companies is important. Innovation occurs in the private sector, and this is the point we've been working on to develop entrepreneurship and other related matters. I would like to thank you for the partnerships that this project has been producing, CEPAL, CGE, PE. I would like to remind the German cooperation, the partnership with the Germans that also have contributed to this project. Nobody mentioned them. So the ministry is here at your disposal to help you. And we think this model of the big push can be applied to other sectors, well, we have many other sectors that we need innovation in, and we often do not have sufficient information. We lack knowledge of what's going on. So on behalf of the Ministry of Science and Technology, on behalf of Minister Marcos Pontes and Paulo Alvin, I would have loved to be here at the opening of the event, but unfortunately I wasn't able to. So I thank you for the invitation, and I give the floor back to the coordinators of the event. Thank you very much. Thank you, Sorian. It's really good to hear you about the systems of innovation, and it's good to see that science and technology may also be applied to other areas. This is very good. And I now give the floor to Salinda Costa, the specialist on regulatory issues by the Ministry of Mines and Energy. So maybe she can comment about this committee on energy innovation. Hi, everybody. Good afternoon. I heard so much interesting information along the morning. And this is really a crowning information to hear about this joint effort by the ministries. This has been channeled by the ETE, the sector of energy, but IEA, CGE, CEPAL, and the Ministry of Science and Technology and others working together. This is very important, and I see this as a milestone. What we're doing here, and we really need to focus on how to making those findings into processes. I think the findings of this initial process with this project is very consistent with what we're identifying in the federal government in general regarding
ciência, tecnologia, inovação para a área de
science, technology, innovation policies for energy and the field of mining as well, because the Ministry of Mines and Energy also works with energy production. So just to put into context, to brief you, we started in 2016 to discuss the reform of the field of electricity or energy production, and we looked at the question of funds for R&D, and this actually, due to our legislation, has been very well conducted by ANEEL, the regulator agency. But what we saw in the discussion that we opened in the beginning for the modernization of the energy sector regarding governance is that maybe we have to look at those resources, but not just those. When we talk about, when we talk to the sector of energy production and all the ecosystem of innovation, as Sarah mentioned, how do the funds, or how should or could those funds be aligned to strategies, and how they could bring more synergic results? We look at the entire competence that is distributed amongst the entities of the government in the different levels of the federation, not counting the private sector and civil society. So we saw this possibility of discussing with the NCIT, at least to align ourselves with them with what is in our competence, because we've been talking for many years about the same things in different and separate boxes. So when Soriano mentioned new sources of investment and endowment funds, we had been sought out by the Ministry of the NCIT to talk about this, and in parallel we were following the energy push initiative. We would love to put all of those solutions in, all those discussions beneath the same umbrella, so that we could look at everything deeply. So that's when we had the idea to create a structure of governance within the ministry and other linked agencies, especially the regulating agencies that have a very operational role. In terms of implementation, but also civil society, the academia. We're looking at a structure of governance that's becoming very interesting. So we will have the two ministries instituting this governance structure. What I think is important is that this is already based on existing initiatives, and we're thinking about building team chambers, and we have no obligation or commitment to conduct all of the discussions. We want this ecosystem that is already working. We want to leave it working as it already is. And one of the chambers of discussion we're looking at is called Data Observatory, because as Jean-Baptiste said, we must have the data, but we must use this data in an intelligent manner as well. When we start discussing policies in a strategic manner, especially the most strategic planning, if you will, the National Plan of Energy, for example, we must include in those plans this kind of indicator and be able to follow, to track what's happening. I don't think this is a short-term solution. I think this is an institutionalization of a method of work, and that we need to adopt this and we need to work together to make this work. And I have a few comments based on everything that was mentioned. And one is that there's something that's very interesting that was mentioned by Bahal in the beginning about
about the
produtivo.
matter of
E aí,
engaging,
eu
of
acho que a gente
engaging the
vive um
productive
outro
sector. I
momento no
think we're
mundo, né? Quando a
looking
gente
at,
falava sobre
we're going
mudanças
through a
climáticas uns
different
10
moment
anos
in the
atrás,
world. When we
e
talked
todo
about
mundo
climate
pensava
change
sobre
10
os
years
custos
ago,
que isso
everybody thought about the
imporia
cost that
para os
this would
países em termos de competitividade.
imply
É
for the
óbvio que
countries
isso
in
ainda é
terms
uma
of
realidade,
competitiveness.
mas o que a gente
Obviously,
vê
this is still
hoje
a
é que o próprio
reality,
setor
but what we see
privado,
today
os
is that the
próprios
private sector
investidores
itself, the
institucionais, eles
investors, the
estão
institutional
pautando
investors
essa discussão
themselves
também.
are bringing
A
this
discussão toda sobre
to the table in
ESGs,
their
né?
discussions,
Então, a gente no
discussion about
Ministério,
the
a gente em paralelo
SDGs.
também está
So
integrando
we at
uma
the ministry in
iniciativa também
parallel, we're integrating
multipartite,
a
que é conduzida
multi-party,
pela CVM,
multi-party
pelo Banco Mundial,
initiative where we have the CVM, the
pelo
World
BIG,
Bank, the
pelo
IDB,
GIZ também,
the
sobre o Laboratório de
GIZ.
Inovação Financeira, né?
This
Como é
is
que a gente
the
faz
laboratory
essa
of
discussão,
financial
conversar
innovation,
com quem
how
quer
we can
financiar esse
bring
tipo de... Né?
the
Quem
sponsors
de mercado
to
quer
this,
financiar esse tipo
who
de
in the market
inovação.
wants to
Então, acho
sponsor
que
this
tem
kind of
bastante
innovation.
sinergia nisso.
So
Então,
there is synergy in this, and I
nessa
think in
estrutura
this
que a gente está criando
structure
como Ministério da
that
Ciência e
we're
Tecnologia,
creating with the
além da questão do
MCIT,
observatório de dados, a gente está criando um outro
we're not
tema,
only
uma outra
creating
cama
a
temática, que é
data
justamente
observatory, but
novos
another
instrumentos
group
financeiros ou novas
to
possibilidades de
discuss
financiabilidade. E aí,
new
justamente, aqui onde a
financial
gente acha que pode entrar
possibilities.
essa discussão.
And I think this is where this
Aí eu acho
discussion
muito
I just
interessante,
mentioned can
como foi falado,
be
né, pela
included
Camila,
in
essa
our
preocupação de
group.
transformar o produto em
So
processo
regarding
e
what
ser um
Camila
start
says, the
para
need of transforming information into processes,
essa iniciativa
and
ser start para essa estrutura de
this
governança que a gente está
initiative
criando.
being
Então,
a
assim, é bem nessa
start,
linha mesmo,
a,
e é isso que a gente está
Kickstarter
tentando
for
fazer e justamente dar
the discussion we're
continuidade.
trying to give continuity to, we're trying to
Deixa eu ver
promote
aqui.
here.
E aí, o que também foi dito
And
também
also it was
pelo
mentioned
MUSE,
by
que é essa
Moose
questão de que a gente tem o objetivo dessa integração
that the objective of this
ministérios é você
integration
ter um
of these
olhar sobre todas as
ministries
etapas da
is
inovação,
looking
né?
at
Sobre
all the
todos os
stages of
instrumentos que a gente
innovation,
tem ao
all the
longo
instruments that
dessas
we
etapas de
are looking
inovação.
at,
E
and
aí,
we
talvez, como
consider
disse o
along the
Jean-Baptiste,
stages
a
of
gente poder,
innovation. And as
inclusive,
Jean-Baptiste said,
criar nessa parte dos
we
dados
can
as métricas para
create
poder acompanhar todas
in
essas
this
etapas.
aspect of data measurement, data tracking, we create
E aí, na
tracking
linha do que ele
systems,
mesmo falou,
tracking
então, justamente,
methods.
eu acho que
And
concordamos plenamente que,
along
no fundo, isso
what
it
he
takes a
said,
system
aligned with what
approach,
he says,
naturalmente,
it
né? A gente
takes
tem que olhar
a
para o sistema de
systemic
inovação como um
approach.
todo.
We have to
E eu
look
gostei
at
muito das
the
perguntas que ele
system as
fez,
a
né? Porque, no
whole.
fundo, são
And I liked the
bom
questions
guia,
you
né?
made very
Assim,
much,
como ele bem falou,
Jean-Baptiste,
acho que
because
todos
this
os
is a good
países
guide it's
se
a very good
deparam com
set of
essas
guidelines for us.
questões
Many countries are looking at us right
dentro de
now.
seus desafios e de suas
We're
realidades, mas suas
looking at
perguntas são as mesmas,
of
né?
course,
Então, eu acho que a
considering
gente
their own
pode
challenges,
olhar para
their
essas
own
perguntas que
realities,
ele
but we
fez
have basically the
de
same
forma até
challenges.
a
So
organizar
we can
pouco
look
o
at the
nosso
questions you asked in
pensamento.
terms of how to organize our thoughts a little bit better. And
Então é isso, assim, eu estou vendo aqui de tudo
I
que eu
think
anotei,
that's
isso, assim, no
it.
fundo, acho que a gente está alinhado, né? Eu
So
acho
I
que a gente
think
está
we're
alinhado
aligned
sobre essa necessidade de criar
about the need to
uma forma de
create
trabalhar de forma coordenada, isso a gente já
we see the need
o próprio
to work
Soriano falou justamente de várias
in an
iniciativas
organized manner. Soriano
já estão
mentioned many
conduzindo no Ministério da
initiatives that are
Tecnologia, e
being
aqui a gente
conducted
vê
by the
naturalmente a
MCIT.
Clarissa, né, do
And
Ministério de
here we
Relações
see
Exteriores,
Clarissa
mas também a gente
of the
trabalha muito
Ministry
junto
of
com o
Foreign
pessoal do
Affairs,
Ministério
and
da
we also work
Economia, e
with
eu
the
gostei
Ministry
muito
of Economy a lot, and I
de um
really
slide
enjoyed
que falava
a slide
justamente
that
sobre
talked about
todo esse planejamento, né,
all the
e toda a
planning
parte, então
and
você tem
all
que ter plano
the
energético, a gente já trabalha sobre isso, plano
plans.
de
If we have
inovação,
an energy
e eu acho
plan
muito
or
interessante
innovation
essa
plan, we have to
discussão de
work on
novo
those. And
sobre
I
o
think
política industrial
this is
na
a very
prática,
important
né,
discussion.
que está no
And I think we
Ministério
need to
da
discuss
Economia, mas
industrial
a
policies,
gente
which is the ministry. This
ajudar com
discussion is
base
in the
nesses
Ministry of
dados, nesses
Economy right now, but we need to
diagnósticos e
help
nessas
them
reflexões,
with
a desenhar uma
diagnostics
política
and
industrial que
data
faça
to help
sentido,
them
e
design
longe daquela
industrial
discussão, né,
policy that makes sense.
intervencionista, mas no fundo é
Not
olhar para
being
essas
an interventionist, please,
indústrias que
but
eventualmente
looking
carecem,
at
né,
industry
de
that
mais
really
atenção.
needs
E aqui eu
more
acho que
attention.
concluo só
And I
falando
think
de uma
here,
questão que eu estava falando com o Gustavo
just to
Nassif e com
mention
o Barra
one
outro
thing
dia,
that I mentioned
que
to
dessas discussões todas de
one
transição
other day,
energética, para mim, o que parece às
I
vezes
think in
mais
terms
óbvio,
of
tudo que eu
transition, in terms of
escuto, é a
energy,
gente
what seems
talvez focar
obvious to
nessas
me
discussões sobre
is that
essas
maybe we should focus on the discussion
indústrias de hard to
about
abate, né, basicamente.
hard
Então,
to a big industry. So when we look at energy, when we think about fuel,
transporte de longa distância, então
about
assim,
long
olha só, a
distance
gente já sabe mais ou menos
transportation,
onde que tem
we
que
already
focar,
know
né,
where we
quando a
have to
gente pensa em
focus,
transição
right?
energética.
When we
Então
think
assim, eu acho
about
que é esse tipo de
transition.
reflexão que eu acho importante, eu
So
vejo assim um público
this is
muito
the kind of
selecionado,
reflection
né,
that's important. I see a
nesse
very select
webinar
focus in
e
this
muitas
event,
pessoas trabalhando,
and many
e aí
people
assim, eu
working
fico
on
feliz
this,
porque essa
and
de
I'm
verdade
very
é a
happy
forma que
because
um
this is
estado
the
que está
manner
diminuindo de
a
tamanho
state
tem que
that's
trabalhar
being
em
reduced
rede,
should work
usando,
in,
né, todo
and
mundo
the network
que pode
using
agregar
everybody
conhecimento.
that can
Então a
add
gente está muito
value,
alinhado
and we
nessa
are very
iniciativa, e
aligned
vocês
in
podem
this
naturalmente
initiative,
contar com a
and
gente no
you
Ministério
can count on us
de Minas e
with the
Energia,
Ministry
e eu falo
of
também
Mines
para o
and
Ministério de Ciência e
Energy,
Tecnologia, né,
and
Soriano,
also with the
para
Ministry of Science and
continuar
Technology, right,
aprofundando essas
Soriano, to
discussões.
continue
Obrigada.
to deepen this discussion. Thank you very much.
Então é isso, a gente chega no final aqui do nosso webinar, da nossa reunião. É excelente notícia do decreto. Realmente, eu acho que, Agnes, o que você falou sobre buscar uma estratégia de país, aproveitar a sinergia e, inclusive, quer dizer, não termina só no MNE e no NCTI, vários outros ministérios foram mencionados, então, realmente, é um início aí de um trabalho. Para quem conheceu agora esse projeto, a nossa ideia realmente é que isso seja a pedra fundamental, mas que ele siga adiante e que a gente realmente continue trabalhando com isso. Esse evento vai estar disponível em breve no YouTube, então se vocês quiserem depois compartilhar com outras pessoas, a gente convida. E é isso, gente, muito obrigada a todos os participantes e realmente eu acredito que a gente conseguiu cumprir aí o nosso objetivo de passar as informações mais importantes aí para vocês, mas eu realmente convido que vocês leiam o relatório, nem tudo o que
I
foi...
invite you to read the report. Not everything that was discussed here was presented by all of us, okay? Have a good day and a good evening for everyone that is in Paris. Thank you very much. Have a good day.